Welcome everyone to another episode of the Practical Broker podcast. I'm really excited today. We have Kayla and I'm not going to pronounce this right. Andrade, on with us from the Landlord and Credit Bureau, and she's a wealth of knowledge about real estate, tenant issues, landlord issues, and she's promoting an amazing new service that we've had in Canada for a couple years now that is helping both tenants and landlords find some really great opportunities to how to rebuild their credit and how to manage this relationship, bring the power back and balance a little bit. So Kayla, please tell us about yourself. How did you get into this business of landlording and property management? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks so much, Chad. I love getting on these podcasts and Zoom meetings wherever I can to share the news of what I do and how I do it and how I got into it. Awesome. So I got into real estate at a very young age. I was 18, young mom with my husband, and we weren't married at the time, but we got into real estate. We bought a semi in Brantford. We changed that up, got ourselves a fiveplex, and through that fiveplex experience, we had the city of Cambridge councillor, a candidate running in the election, and she approached my husband and said, "Hey, I just want to let you know that your tenants delinquent utility bills, the city's going to put it onto your property taxes." And we're like, whoa, what's going on here? So we did some research and investigation of finding out what this was all about. And it was what they were trying to implement. Knowing what we knew, we had to know that we had to inform other landlords. We had to tell them what was happening so that we can we have more power in numbers. And that was my goal when I called as many landlords on Kijiji as I possibly could. And I'm like, "Hi, I'm calling about your semi. Well, I'm not calling to rent it. I just want to let you know that if the tenant doesn't pay their water bill, it's going to your property taxes. Get down to the city hall on this time and this date." Then we had a protest outside of City Hall. And I was like, okay, this is great. This is great to see how we have a policy, a municipal policy that is affecting the rental housing industry. And it's taken a long time for me to call every landlord and have this protest and have these little meetings at the Royal Canadian Legions to talk about it. How can we talk together faster? And how can we bring on more landlords who are dealing with the exact same situation in their city? That's when we created Ontario Landlords Watch members group on Facebook. This was a way for us to bring as many landlords in as possible and inform them of what was happening on a municipal level, what was happening on a regional level, and what was happening on a provincial level. And most importantly, informing them of what was happening with the Landlord and Tenant Board. Absolutely. And so right now as today, we've actually been running Ontario Landlords Watch for over 10 years. Wow. This is amazing to see. And now we have well over 5,700 members. We have such a huge waiting list to get in. It's just about where you know us from. We're very protective of this community that we've built. So we'd like to see, a full profile, not like a new account, unless they come in from Chad, say, "Hey, I heard from you from Chad, we'll let you in." But I tell you, we have rules, keep it on the mission at hand, and that is to create a better system for good landlords, good tenants, and taxpayers.
Absolutely. So this is a Facebook group called Ontario Landlord Watch.
Ontario Landlords Watch members. So members you got to put in there and make sure that you find the group, because we do have our public page. The public page, we like to put different articles on there so that if you do find something interesting that you want to share that's been posted in the group, you now have the option to do that from the public page.
Okay, that's great. And I would encourage all of our listeners to go on. If you're not familiar with Facebook groups, go on to Facebook groups and join there. It's a wealth of knowledge. And some of the conversations in there are just mind-blowing. That sometimes what some tenants are doing and some people don't understand their rights, both as landlords and tenants. It's a fantastic group. And that's how we connected earlier in the year. And I'm really thankful that I joined it. It's amazing.
Oh, we've been building it. It's definitely from realtors to property managers, to landlords and paralegals. We really have to have a deep understanding of the landlord and tenant board issues. And what we mostly love to do is create those solutions, taking those solutions from the group so I can bring that to the elected officials and to the staff of the landlord and tenant board.
Absolutely. We definitely need advocacy, right? I know there's a lot of the tenant group side is very well organized. And they don't realize a lot of times that, hey, landlords are just the majority of landlords. I think, 53% statistics are housing is provided by small landlords versus
that's 80.
It's up to 80.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I was always hearing 60, and then we've heard it was about that 80 mark, and that is the most of why we need more small landlords in this industry. So we're doing our best to educate our elected official folks on that. It's not about the developers, it's about the small landlords.
Absolutely. And at the small landlords, I mean, obviously I'm biased and so are you in the sense that we are small landlords. We've grown up in this industry. You know, we've had all kinds of different tenants in different locations. But small business and small landlords were very adaptive to change, right? So because it's only a duplex or a fourplex or a 6 unit or something like that, if we need more 3 bedrooms, well, then all of a sudden the market responds and more landlords will buy townhouses and provide that kind of housing. Or if it's 1 bedroom apartments in a location, landlords will see the demand and go in there and buy and build more 1 bedroom units. So it's more responsive.
What we see now, because of COVID and because of these lockdowns and because of these eviction bans and because of this rental freeze, we have our landlords now cashing out of single families and townhouses and condos, and just cashing out on a good market, a very hot market, because it's still obviously good. But when these houses are selling for, a semi is selling over 300,000 over asking price, and that gives a total of 800,000 that's being sold for, do you really think these properties are going to see the light of day as a rental in this market again?
No.
So our government is on that sand fixture is there. It's tipped upside down, and they're on the clock. And we hope that they see this and they fix it now with working with small and landlords versus against them, because this is what is going to be the domino effect of how this housing crisis is going to get worse.
100%. And then I see, and so do you, lots of landlords that are, they're trapped. They're powerless right now. I know one in particular. I mean, you've heard the story 100 times, I'm sure, is, they're up to $30,000 in arrears, still waiting for a hearing. He's an older gentleman. He's literally taking money off a line of credit to pay the mortgage, water bill, like you mentioned, being added to his property taxes. And the tenant's like, nah,
They don't care. And you know what? We're just hearing about same situation, 30,000 landlord filled out the wrong form or filled out the form wrongly. This has now resulted him into restarting back all over again. And when you're experiencing a 10-month wait to have your case heard at the Landlord and Tenant Board, this is why this is not acceptable. You're denying any justice delayed is justice denied. And this is the message that we as landlords and property managers and realtors have to issue, is that if you're delaying justice, you're denying us justice. So this is why we have to get they got to get their part of my language shit together.
Yeah,
and they
for
have
sure.
to get it done now, because we are looking at different options. We need to look at different options because we can't put our faith and our heart and soul into thinking that the government's going to do what's right. Because if you look at why they don't do it, look at what's happening with their own government housing. Look at how much they pay for shelters and emergency shelters
Ridiculous.
and motels. They pay $3,000 a month just to house someone in a motel.
Yeah.
This can certainly pay someone's rent, but they have a system that's backwards. They have rent relief that's only able to be applied for by the tenant. So we have a lot of different solutions that we can offer. They just have to make sure that they have a nice task force with landlords being a part of that roundtable discussion. And I'm hoping to be on one of the committees within the city of Cambridge so that they can have that landlord voice before they make any decisions that could affect, both good landlords and good tenants and the taxpayers.
Absolutely. And what I would suggest is don't just do Cambridge, right? Try to get on the provincial side and reach out. You're definitely an advocate for the industry and you definitely are in the know. So it's something that's important.
Definitely getting our landlords. Contact your MPP and tell them about me. Say, we
Absolutely.
need Kayla in there on anything you're dealing with housing.
Yeah, you got it. So tell me about Landlord Credit Bureau. How did you end up joining? You're part of the company, you're promoting it. Tell me a little bit about that and what services, how does it help both landlord and tenants?
So when Bill 184 came out, I was so disheartened. I was like, we brought about 11 different landlords and investors, and even the sheriff of the region of Waterloo to this meeting with the Ministry of Housing, Perm Gill, and we're giving them all of the issues, all of the solutions. We had an hour, and based on pictures and stuff, about an hour and a half. Communicating with them, explaining to them, this is what the problem is, this is what our solutions are. And that was back then. Yeah. And then they came out with Bill 184 and we're like, okay, you know what, this was wrong. You guys did everything wrong. All you did is put more restrictions onto the N12s and the N13s. And if anyone's listening, is N12 is for taking it over for your own personal use or that of the buyer, as well as N13 is for renovations. Because obviously we get in trouble for not doing the work, but we can't do the work within the tenants. So they just put those fees from 25,000 up to 50,000 for an individual, and then they did 100,000 to 250,000 for a corporation. And that is the overall problem. And that's what the overall problem is for, that was Bill 184. The luckily thing about Bill 184 is that we like the concept that they were able to take tenants who would normally bring up maintenance issues at the landlord tenant board to avoid their eviction. They now have to do that within 7 days. Are adjudicators listening to it? Not so much. Stay tuned to your local hearing block so that you can find out what is actually happening. And that's what upset me, is that they only touched little bits of it, little bits that are not going to make an impact in the industry, little bits that are not going to speed up the landlord and tenant board and give fairness to both parties. So I started looking around. I said, okay, if we find a way to find our good tenants or to find our bad delinquent tenants before we even get them into our unit, we wouldn't have to deal with the broken system that we have today. We could just focus on being good landlords. And that's when I found Landlord Credit Bureau online. And same thing, I just thought, hey, can us Canadians, report to you, thinking that it was just the US? And they're like, no, we're actually in Canada as well. And I'm like, no. And I did everything. I did the grilling. How is this allowed? How is this consent versus non-consent? Because a lot of people think that you need to get consent. When you're reporting a bad debt, you don't need consent. And this is when you have good paying tenants and you want to report them to Landlord Credit Bureau, which it goes to their Equifax and builds their credit, you'll need that tenant's consent because you're reporting good payment behavior.
Right.
Kind of backwards, eh? You need their consent to report the good stuff, but you don't need their consent to report the bad stuff. You can do rent and you can do utilities. The only time you need a judgment or an order is going to be for the damages.
Right.
So after I started to, grill them for, how is this alive? Like, I should have spent my 10 years finding you and telling you about this. And so right away, I started sharing this information with my landlords. I wanted to get their feedback on them right away. Same reaction as what I'm getting. And that's when I said, hey, guys, let me know if you're hiring. And they're like, actually, and now as of today, as of March 26th, I am now the national ambassador to Landlord Credit Bureau. And
that's awesome.
Something that I take great pride in because it's something that, one, I know it's bringing protection to our good landlords. It's going to help our good tenants build that credit score and to set them up for success, to get them to have their own properties, to become landlords themselves. And it's going to be a way for us to unite as landlords and property managers and realtors by knowing that we have this system to report in and knowing that we're all being connected and being able to benefit our good tenants and our landlords. They're absolutely floored to know that you can report your past tenants, the ones that have been here and gone, and you can actually report them into Landlord Credit Bureau too. It's a phenomenal system that I will do whatever I need to do to protect it, because as you know, sometimes our delinquent tenants are not very happy about this service, and they will come on Twitter. So if anyone's on Twitter, make sure you show some love to Landlord Credit Bureau on Twitter, because on there it's tend to be the tenants and politicians on Twitter. So I'm not really liking Twitter, but we're there. We have to make sure we're on all platforms. Not as LCB, but definitely as Ontario Landlords Watch as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was funny. I had a client the other day in my mortgage brokerage look up a review on a lender, a really big lender, and they do billions and billions of dollars. And he goes, I only saw 5 Google reviews on this lender. He goes, are they really like small? I'm like, no, that's a good sign. He's like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, people only complain. They only go to Google and Twitter for complaints. Very rarely do people go and say positive, yay, so I'm like, they do 10,000 mortgages a year and they have 5 reviews. Like, that's actually pretty good for a bank.
Oh yeah. And that's the sad part too, is that you have, if you look at the 2018 to 2019 stats, there was over 80,000 applications brought to the Landlord and Tenant Board. 73,000 of them were landlord applications. So you can see that we could have potentially 73,000 tenants just in Ontario, obviously not happy with this. But what happens is that the good ones see it. The good ones are using it. The good ones are signing up, and the good ones are defending it. And that's what you need to know. And know that, they have that relationship. They have the collaboration with Equifax. They've obviously done their due diligence to know it's not a breach of privacy, what they have to do. And you're going to get mixed messages in the media about this. And that's because it's a system that works. It's bringing fairness and balance into the industry to make sure that we are getting access to justice and bringing in accountability. That is what it is. It's accountability.
Shocking. Accountability. Wow. Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, right? Is that most landlords, probably you might have the stats on this, 90, I'm guessing 95% are good landlords, and they're solid intentions. And just like most tenants are, in the I'd say the high 90s are good people. They always pay their rent on time. Like at the beginning of the COVID pandemic last year, all of our rentals paid. Everybody was. Then I had one tenant that was legitimately struggling. We worked it out for a few months, and then she caught up. So, the majority of people are great, but we just got to weed out those, bad tenants. But also there's some, crappy landlords too. And that's why if the system is working properly, both the tenants and the landlords get that fixed quickly.
Especially when a landlord is being a part of this program and offering it to the tenant, you're going to know that they're going to be a good landlord that you want to be working with. And as a bad tenant, we have bad tenants who are abusing the system, and then we have tenants who are struggling, right? We have to know the difference, right? And this is why, as landlords, we need to really pay attention, not only just on the advocacy level, but what type of government programs are out there to help your tenants. Is there a rent relief program in your region? Is there one in Canada? And there is. There's also programs for utilities. So if you have tenants who are struggling with paying their utilities, let's connect them to these different services. Let's be that united voice with them, because that's what we have to understand, is that we have good landlords and we have bad landlords. We have big landlords, we have small landlords, but we have bad tenants and we have good tenants. And that's what we need to divide to make sure 100%. That we give credit to where credit's due. And hey, Chad, just so our listeners are working, is that we're going to have our landlords nominate one of their tenants to be a winner of 1 month's free rent.
Nice.
So we actually have that coming up through Ontario Landlords Watch. That's going to be in the next month or so. So everyone kind of take a glance over, get onto the Ontario Landlords Watch public page, give us a like so we can inform you when that's happening, because we want to start showing that we do have good landlords, because
that's amazing.
Because this is not what defines our industry. Everyone would say that this is scary. I'm not going to get into it, but we do have our good ones, and we do need to recognize that.
That's great. So we'll get into the sign-up process later about the Landlord Credit Bureau, but more high level, what are some of the tips that you might be able to tell landlords about, how do they choose a good tenant? What are some of those signs that, differentiate the really good quality from the not so good quality kind of people?
Okay, so let's see here. This is going to be series number 1 because there's going to be lots of things. It's almost like whack-a-mole. You got to really, make sure that you're doing your part. You got to get your rental unit completely looking the way it should be, the way it should be presented. If it's underneath construction, don't even bother showing that. You really want to attract the good type of tenants that you're looking for. Now, when you take these pictures and you get them onto Facebook or you get them on Kijiji, get that description where you're not telling them what you're looking for, but you're there to sell your unit. Tell it what it has, what features does it have. Is there schools by? Is it parks? Is it shopping? Is it buses? How many parking? Is fridge, stove, washer, and dryer included? Letting them know that first and last month's rent is required. Reference checks will be done. A tenancy search with Landlord Credit Bureau. And at that bottom, this is what I love. This is why I got so passionate about LCB, is because you're going to put down that you report your tenant's monthly payment history. This is going to attract good tenants who want that to build their credit. And it's going to shy away from people who are not serious about your rental unit, and they're actually just going to do a no-show. So this is something that could really all about just the ads. Now, when you come, you're going to see a lot more quality type of tenants who are serious about that rental unit. So the next step is now getting them interested, asking them what they like, talk to them as a hey, have you been looking at other properties? What have you think? Like, how are the other landlords out there? You can start to really justify their personality by how they're going to describe the rental industry to you. I've had tenants tell me that they've been brought to the landlord and tenant board to be evicted because they complained about mold.
Right.
This is and they just think you're going to fall for that sappy story. And every landlord needs to know it's not about the sappy story. I know we're human. It hurts my heart. It really does. But we are a business. And in order to keep your business going, you need to make sure that the numbers work and you're keeping your customers happy. And you cannot go ahead and rush a decision on accepting someone just because your heart told you to. You have to look at their financials. You have to see if they can afford it. You have to find out if you have to be able to come at them and pay for what they can't. So do it like the bank would do for you. There's going to be lots of different products and services that I'm going to be bringing out in the next couple of weeks that really unite what we need as landlords.
Amazing.
Instead of dealing with, hey, government, what are you going to give me? But really connect to your tenants on a friendly level, not so much as a, hey, are you going to be smoking pot in here? Do you smoke in here? Do you have a dog? Are you going to have roommates? Are you going to sublet my unit? Are you going to damage my place? Are you not going to be paying rent? Like, this is the part that sometimes landlords, we grill so much that they're going to tighten up. You got to loosen them up a little bit, relate to them, and lay down the law right there and then. Listen, this is the unit. I don't tolerate late payment. And if so, you're automatically going to be getting these notices.
So let me go back to that at the beginning, right in your ad, because that's really different, right? Most landlords don't do that. So saying right in the ad, right at the beginning, so when a tenant's applying or even before they show up to see the unit, you're saying right there, or you're recommending all the landlords say right there, your rent, good and bad, will be reported to the Landlord Credit Bureau and Equifax. And so that's dissuading those people that know they don't have an intention of paying will automatically just not even show up.
You'll have a lot of tenants say, hey, are you going to do a credit check? Right? And they'll ask that right up the back because then they won't even bother to. But again, just because we're reporting the monthly payment history to Equifax, that doesn't mean that someone with bad credit can't pay their rent. We don't know what happened. It could have been someone had fraudulently done something. It could be someone who had a divorce. It could be someone who fell underneath hard times and didn't pay that Rogers bill, but they made sure that the rent was paid on time. That's what you're going to get when you do a tenancy search with Landlord Credit Bureau. Now, you're going to be able to see that payment history, that they were able to make their payments. And you can also see the questions that the previous landlord was able to put in on that tenant. So, would you rent to this person again? Did you bring them to the landlord and tenant board? And you can also put a review of them. So if you do have a good tenant, you know how you have that letter of reference and, can you write me well, put it into the system. That way landlords now know it's legit because you are being vetted as a landlord to use LCB services.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah. When I, in the private lending side of our business, we do this quite often. And I tell all my investors that just because somebody has a bad credit, there might be a low credit score or something, definitely doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad risk. And it all comes back to their character. And their credit bureau is very much like a story of their life, right? Yeah. And I say this all the time to my investors, my banks that we deal with. If they're chronically late, like consistently for years, they're going to be chronically late going forward. But if they were good credit, and their credit went to crap, and then good credit again, but their score is still low. They had a life event. They got sick. They lost their job. Something happened. Yeah. But you can generally tell the character of a person from their credit bureau. And
sometimes too, like I see a lot of landlords, like we need, the rent is on the 1st. I have a t-shirt that says rent is due on the 1st. Our second conference t-shirt was N4 on the 2nd. Yeah. I'm very strong heartedly, but sometimes if you open that communication up with your tenants and they want to pay you on the 8th. Yeah. Yes, it's late. Do you issue an N8? No, you've got to work that relationship as long as your book, your banking and your numbers work. You could let tenants pay in that time frame. It doesn't have to be on the 1st, but make sure that your lease is always stating the 1st, though.
100%. So that's amazing. So it's helping to report. It's getting there. That's a really good tip about putting that right in the ads. And now tell me about some of these. How you guys the system is helping collect from like some landlords have already, they signed up, the tenants are there 6 months, a year ago. They're struggling. So your system is actually helping people get arrears paid up, right?
Oh, it's way better than a collection agency. So when a landlord would look at a tenant didn't pay their rent and they left the unit, and then you got to find them at their new address, and you got to serve them the paperwork, and then you got to bring them to small claims court, look for a garnishment, or then you're putting them into the collection agency. And
Yeah.
with a collection agency, they take about 35 to 40% of whatever they collect. As
Yeah.
landlords are able to put these people into Landlord Credit Bureau on their collect as a former tenant or as an open trade line, this is what's going to follow them. It's going to follow them if they need a loan. It's going to follow them if they need a car. It's going to follow them for their next rental. So when it comes down to it, soon as that door opens where they need that and it comes up on their credit, that's when they're like, I need this. This is on my credit. How am I still going to get this? Oh, I need to pay this.
Yeah.
And that's why they automatically jump onto LCB. They're able to communicate with whom has put them into LCB, and they're able to straighten up that delinquency. And that's when it gets reported as a closed trade line at the Landlord Credit Bureau and onto Equifax to show that it's been dealt with.
Nice.
And a lot of people may say, oh, well, what if I have a vindictive landlord? What if they come on and they say something nasty about me or give the wrong total? This is the best side, is that you can open a dispute with Landlord Credit Bureau. So if you want to dispute something, you can show your proof of what you're disputing. And that's why when they report to Equifax, it's reported in the middle of the month for the previous month. And a notification goes to our tenants right away. As soon as you open up that tenancy record for your tenant, put their email in there, they'll get that welcome email. They'll get the reminder email that their rent is due, and they'll also get the email informing them of the consequences of how it's damaging their credit score by not addressing the delinquency on their record.
That's great. That's completely, I love it. I can't believe that this should almost be a provincial regulation, really.
That's what I've talked about. I talked to my elected officials. I said, we need to see this in the government housing. You have people in government housing who pay their rent on time, but there's no incentive for them to move out. And there's no incentive because either A, they don't have the money. But there is affordable housing benefits that we could offer these people. But again, their credit's bad. How are they going to get into the private sector now? Well, let's build their credit while they're still in government housing. There's so much. And then now landlords have the access to that data. They have the data in where to know who's paying and who's paying on time. And this is why we need to have all landlords signing up, all tenants signing up. I'll make sure my tenants, my new ones coming in, I want to see them sign up with LCB themselves. I want them to give their credentials. I want to see that they're signing up to be a serious candidate. And once I get notified that they have their membership, then that's the final piece on my application process.
That's great. It's like a pre-approved tenant, right? You're basically.
Yep. And if they don't sign up, do we want it?
That's a great idea. And so a big question that I had when I first heard about this, and you touched on it a few times in our conversations, is how is this legal? How is it? Because if they're not signing a consent form, what is that? I know you dug into it as a landlord yourself, really big, how is it okay to do this from a law perspective?
They're definitely following the PETA. So that's usually the problem people see is the whole privacy, but there's never a law that allows you, doesn't allow you to report a bad debt. Okay. And that's the concept that people don't understand, is that really we could have been doing this for years, reporting, just like if you have an amount owing, you can bring it to the collection agency right away. Right. Same thing with LCB. So if you have a debt, you can report that debt. But if you want to report good debt, you do need to have that tenant's consent. And you're definitely going to need your tenant's consent when it comes down to doing the tenancy search. So if you go on to landlordcreditbureau.ca, right at the bottom, you'll see those clauses that that you can put inside of your application and also your lease so that landlords can give consent to do the tenancy search. And there's also that legal framework that will give you all the wording that you need to share that information with your tenant, just in case they have a problem with you reporting their delinquency to Landlord Credit Bureau.
Oh, that's amazing. Perfect. I love that. Now, I know you guys are also running a bit of a promotion right now. There's a discount code for landlords that want to sign up, because there's two options, right? You have a free version and a paid version.
Yes, so you've got the free basic account. It's going to help you with your tenancy records and you're putting your information in, but you want to have the premium account. Now, the premium account it's $19.99 monthly. And if you use the discount code OLW15, you'll get 15% off the monthly membership. and then it's 60 cents per lease per month. So if you have 5 people on the lease, you can report all 5. It's still only going to be 60 cents per lease per month.
Wow,
Or
that's cheap.
you can jump over to the yearly membership, which is $199, and then you'll still go to your 60 cents per lease per month. And if you look at in Ontario, being able to pay $186 to $201 for an application, guys, this is worth every money, and start using it as a tax write-off because it's for your business.
Absolutely. That's great. So how do people find out about you? How do people find out about the Landlord and Tenant Board or Bureau? Sorry. And what else do you do? You're promoting this service? Is there any other services that you provide?
So I'm Ontario Landlords Watch members on Facebook. So make sure that you get yourself in there to connect you to this community, because this is about coming on to here to talk to you guys about Landlord Credit Bureau. Yes. But my main goal here is to encourage you to advocate, encourage you to pay attention, to watch the government, what they're doing, and how to speak up against it. Because until the power of people speak up against what they're doing, they're going to continue to keep putting more restrictions on this industry, and it's going to hit home for everybody, from landlords, property managers, mortgage brokers. It's always going to be a domino effect. So getting ourselves into Ontario Landlords Watch is number 1. For anyone who's interested in Landlord Credit Bureau, which I hope you are, because if I could spend the last 10 years telling you about Landlord Credit Bureau, I would have. So get on to landlordcreditbureau.ca, and you'll be able to check out all the different type of benefits and more to come. This is only the beginning, especially now that I'm a part of the team. My head just keeps racing on what we can do with this. And it's going to be really exciting to see. And getting into the application process, getting that wording into your application right away, and start this right from the get-go. It's great when it's so new with your new tenants coming in, and it's a little time consuming for, having to explain this to your new tenants happening. But again, we're going to be working on giving that welcome email that's going to explain everything for you, so you don't have to do it. So it's going to be a phenomenal way for us to really unite ourselves, especially not only just in Ontario, but all landlords across Canada and as well as the States.
That's amazing. That's awesome. So if somebody wanted to contact you directly, is it best through Facebook?
Yeah, I think Facebook is, my email went crazy. I used to give everybody an email, but I love, if you have a letter that you want to send to your MPP and CC me in that email, please use my email at olwlandlords@gmail.com. I am on Facebook as Kayla Andrade. You can kind of see me. I had a babysitter that night, so I had my makeup on.
Nice.
I didn't go anywhere, so that was my not going away anywhere place. And you can add me as a friend request on there, and then you can also communicate with me through Ontario Landlords Watch Facebook page as well. So I'm really excited to meet different people, because honestly, once I do these podcasts and the Zoom meetings, I do get an influx. So I will get to you. Just be patient with me, because I do want to make sure that we let all the listeners in to help you grow as a real estate agent and property manager and realtor, and also make sure that you're protected.
That's amazing. Well, listen, thank you so much for all the advocacy you were doing, and all the landlords out there I know, and the tenants too, that are really good quality tenants that pay on time. They want to be differentiated from the ones that aren't. So thank you for doing all this. It is really, and thank you for coming on the show. It means a lot.
No, Chad, thank you so much for doing this. It's I never even, and you have a podcast going on. I just follow you and watching all your posts. I'm like, oh my God, he's got a podcast. So make sure you send me the link to it as well, so I can share it with our members, and keeping them connected to different products, services, education is the key in this industry, because if I knew what I knew back then, we probably would have a whole different RTA.
Completely. Well, thank you very much. To all of our listeners, please make sure you subscribe, click the like button or the check box or whatever it is. We're on all major podcast services, so iTunes and Spotify and Castbox and all the other ones, they're all there. And if you want to reach out to us, it's the Practical Broker podcast, and you can reach me at bestinterest.ca. So thank you very much. And once again, Kayla, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you so much, Chad. And thank you everyone for listening. Make sure that you're advocating and protecting the rental housing.